So I'm excited for this episode because it kind of ties into moves both you and I have made recently, and something that I was not very good at, to be honest with you, for much of my life that I think I'm getting a little better at, and that is the purpose of loneliness and being alone. So, Ollie, why do you think many of us view loneliness or being alone as a negative thing?
That is a deep question. I think that we just have so much always going on in the world where it's almost like we're conditioned to constantly be stimulated, social media, talking to coworkers, Zoom call, whatever, to where it's hard. It's hard for us to be alone. There's a study that I've talked about before that had a bunch of college students sit in a room, and all they had in the room, and all they were told is that they are to stay in this room by themselves for half an hour. And the only thing in the room is a button to where they can shock themselves. And they're just like, okay, there's a button here that'll shock you, but there's nothing else in the room. Just sit here for 30 minutes and we're going to come back and just observe how the half an hour went. And I forget the exact percentage, but it was overwhelming. It was like 80% or something of the people shocked themselves in the room because they couldn't stand just to be alone with no like stimuli and stimulation. So I think that's a big part of it, is we're so conditioned to constantly having some sort of stimulus going on, whether that's a person or a piece of technology, and that we have this belief that being alone is a sad thing to do, I guess. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because other cultures, like meditation is like part of their daily routine. And that's all about being alone with your, like, clearing your thoughts and just being alone in the present moment. So I think it's definitely a Western issue in that we kind of embraced, and that we've talked about before, this grind mentality, the hustle mentality, that you only have 24 hours in a day, so you got to pack as much as you can in every 24 hours a day. And what we find is over the long term, that has many negative consequences as well, right? We're mentally drained, physically drained. We're not taking care of our bodies. Emotionally, we're drained. We haven't loved like we should have loved. We don't have a lot of people in our lives because we focus so much on completing tasks that we missed, quite honestly, the journey. And I think loneliness and quiet time is essential to balance a lot of that out. But as employers or companies, we view that as unproductive time, right? Like, oh, if Ollie sits and just clears his thoughts, even though maybe that's sitting and clearing your thoughts and meditating for 10 minutes triggers some creative juices, and now you come back and solve the problem that stumped you for 3 days. Because there's not a product or something happening in those 10 minutes, we view it as a waste of time. And I think that's one of the why meditation is becoming much more mainstream and rising in popularity again, is people are realizing you can't go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for very long before you burn yourself out and you start suffering from trying to be busy all the time and not embracing the quiet side of life.
Yeah, I agree with that. It can,
and you're sold it, right? Like, think about Vegas.
right.
Like, Las Vegas to me is a perfect example. There's no clocks in any of the casinos. They pump them full of oxygen and light and noise and stimulus to just keep you going. Like a hamster in the wheel, right? Like, you just don't even know you should be in bed already. You don't know it's 4 a.m., but you're still spending money.
Right.
But nobody promotes, or very few promote, like, just sitting and meditating for 10 minutes is a product, right? Or I think we know it's good for us, but we won't take the time to do it, right? Because we could send 4 more emails or watch 2 more YouTube videos, or spend that 10 minutes catching up on social media. And you look like, what are we sold? We're sold that you always got to be in crowds, you got to be partying. Like, I mean, if you look at your social media feed, it's always people in group. You know what I mean? Like, we're just kind of programmed, and I would say tricked a little bit, to forget that quiet time is also good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That is kind of mainstream, what we're taught, what we're told, what we're fed. But I have found that there's some major benefits to having some alone time, to having some quiet time, whether that's carved out a couple minutes a day with your meditation, or for an extended period of time, a few days, kind of like what you're going through now, of really isolating yourself in Wyoming. How has that been? Because this is all pretty fresh, right? It's been what, 4 weeks?
Yeah, 3.5, yeah, 4 weeks now, a month. It's good, man. It takes some getting used to, and like, honestly, I'm not sure that's not why I didn't get sick the very first week I was up there for like 3 days. Was like just detoxifying from being around people all the time, and technology all the time, and stimulus all the time. Because when we're out there, there's maybe 6 of us within 40 acres. So like, you have plenty of time to go off and be by yourself and just hear nature and reconnect. And I like it. And honestly, that's not something I was good at. If you'd have talked to Jerrod from probably even 5 years ago, all the way back, if I had downtime, I would go do something. Like, I couldn't just sit and like listen to the birds or look for deer. And it's funny because there's, you know, people are like, well, I don't see any deer. I don't see any of the turkeys walking by. And a lot of times the difference between those of us that seeing them and not seeing them is just stillness, right? Like, you get out to nature, it's an interesting balance, because if you're still, if you just sit, you will see so many different birds, and you'll see deer walk by, and you'll hear all this stuff. But if you're always going, always on the move, you won't see any of it. And to me, that's been a pretty interesting microcosm of life, is like how much busyness if I just put in my day because I thought I should be busy, that I really didn't see the cool, important stuff that was happening around me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how much of a different view stillness can create through that stillness lens. So for you, Jerrod, how can spending time alone, or how has spending time alone been a good thing? I know just right now you mentioned it's almost like you got sick, like you were detoxifying. So after that experience, which sounds like it wasn't very pleasant,
No, not at all.
what were the good things and the positives that came out of spending time isolated in nature, being alone?
I think you get clarity of thought, right? Because like, it's just you and your thoughts, and you can really think through. You don't have a ton of stimulation. You're not just looking at your phone every 20 seconds. Um, you can get creative. Like for me, like it's easier to write when I'm out there. It's easier to think of what I want to be doing, who I want to be becoming, when I'm not just rushing from task to task and thing to thing. And it just slows you down. Like, you realize, to me, one of the big things is you realize life is short, right? Many of us know. And when you get out to nature and you just get away from all the people, and wherever your nature is, whether it's a park in the city or all the way out in the country, wherever it is, you just stop and listen. You can kind of appreciate all the small stuff that's going on around you, and take in that appreciation and start applying it to your life. Like, man, what are all the small things that are going on around me that I should appreciate, that maybe I missed, that maybe being busy I overlooked, and I didn't say I love you, or I didn't just enjoy this moment to its fullest because I was already thinking about getting to the next one. And then I think that's one of the best benefits is realizing, you can slow life down as much as, there's that, I forget what people say, but comments like life just goes by so fast. And as you get older, it goes faster. But I think if you take a proactive approach, you can slow life down. And that a lot of times is sitting and just slowing your thoughts down and taking moments to not be constantly on the go. But you moved to Florida, you left your whole community. So, you got you and Courtney down there, but not nearly the circle of influence you had up here, or the circle, just the constantness here. So how's it been a good thing for you?
Well, it's been a little bit of both, and I'll speak on what's been hard about it here a little later. But what's been good, a lot of it is exactly what you said, a lot of clarity. When you uproot yourself from your daily routines and habits, because we're creatures of habit, right? We fall into a routine, we fall into a habit, and then we do the same things. So when you force yourself and uproot yourself from these rituals and habits, you have to reevaluate and reassess everything that's important to you, because you're going into new routines and rituals, and it's like you get to choose all over again how you're going to build your life, really. So when I first got here, I was before I got here, I was going to trials. Training was a huge part of my life. 4 or 5 times a week, I was at the gym with my community training. When I got here, I told myself I have a few business goals and some big business things that I need to do, to where I'm not going to join a gym until I complete X, Y, and Z. So that was a huge change. But in that, and not having lots of my time filled with training and my normal like busy work routine in the office, I had a lot of clarity come in as to how I want to move forward in this next chapter of my life. The types of people that I want to surround myself with now that I have an opportunity to kind of rebuild community, rebuild friendships, spending time not only in our backyard here in the sunroof Lene thing, but also having the beach, going over, taking some walks on the beach, and continuing my meditation practice here. And that's, found out what woodpeckers sound like, some cool stuff in nature, learning about these different fruits over here. Like we have what are they called? Like a Romulan or some crazy like fuzzy thing, lychees, some tropical fruits, really enjoying some of the nature, the different types of rain, and then clarity through the stillness of not only being alone, but specifically with meditation, of really trying to just focus on my breath, clear my mind. I feel like what happens is that when you clear your mind of having constant stimulus and constant thoughts, average person has about 60,000 thoughts a day. When you clear that for brief moments, that's when, boom, those lightning bolt ideas come in. Like sometimes it's always when you're doing nothing, when some great idea will come to you. It's never when you're on the phone or when you're scrolling social media or when you're doing the busy work. It's always in the stillness. So I've noticed I've had a lot more things coming in where I'm like, oh yeah, like that's something I need to do. That's a great idea, because I haven't had as much of my time filled with people, things, and stimulus.